surveying of the book of Nehemiah from a leader's perspective. Now, from a 30,000 view, if I could summarize the book of Nehemiah for you, from my perspective, there are three major sections in the book. There's that section that talks about rebuilding, that section that talks about reviving, and that section that talks about resettling. Now, from Nehemiah 1 through Nehemiah 7, Nehemiah is going to be talking about the city's protection by erecting and restoring foundational retainer walls, and watch this, in 52 days. Now, that may not mean much to you until you study the historical background of what has happened here with the city of Jerusalem. These walls have been in disrepair for more than 120 years because years earlier, Nebuchadnezzar has come, taken Babylon into captivity for 70 years, destroyed the city, destroyed the walls, and the city has been in disrepair now, these walls, for more than 120 plus years. And what the people could not do in 120 years, Nehemiah is going to show up and get it done in 52 days. I'm going somewhere tonight. Now I want you to watch this. So Nehemiah 1 through 7, he's talking about rebuilding. But Nehemiah 8 through 10, he's talking about, watch this, once the walls have been rebuilt, now you got to get the people's passion turned back, watch this, not only to God, but to the Word of God. In point of fact, Nehemiah is going to give us, by way of Ezra, a biblical philosophy of preaching. The way I preach, the reason I preach the way I preach is because of a statement in Nehemiah 8 and verse number 8. We'll get to it before all of this is over. A lot of us got Haddon Robinson's textbook on expository preaching. He kind of popularized it here in these United States. But if we be true to the facts and true to the book, Haddon Robin was not the one who introduced expository preaching. Ezra introduced it in Nehemiah chapter 8 and verse number 8. So after the rebuilding of the walls, now revival is going to break out from Nehemiah 8 through Nehemiah 10. And then from Nehemiah 11 through Nehemiah 13, he's going to, watch this, resettle population groups. People who are still coming back from Persian captivity to relocate in Jerusalem. These people are going to be relocated, and people who have moved out to the suburbs because of the broken down walls are going to be resettled back into the city of Jerusalem. So that's an overview of the book. Now, let's get into the historical context of the book so I can get into some leadership lessons. In the original Hebrew scriptures, in the original Hebrew Bible, Nehemiah is not a stand-alone book. It is, in the Hebrew Bible, it is combined with the book of Ezra. Nehemiah is one book. Now, it stayed that way until the Reformation movement. Now, if you're going to understand and appreciate the book of Nehemiah, there are two other books that you have to read alongside of Nehemiah. That is the book of Esther. That is the book of Ezra, because Esther and Ezra and Nehemiah all occur in the same historical time frame. Now, watch this. All of this occurs when David unites all of the tribes together in what we call the United Kingdom. They stayed united under David. And then his son Solomon comes along, and the tribes are still united. But something happens under Solomon. If you go back and read the story in Samuel and Chronicles, Solomon is going to have 700 wives and 300 concubines. I don't have enough time. 700 wives and 300 concubines. Well, what's the problem there? Well, herein is the problem. Because he had all of these wives and all of these concubines, he now is going to build altars and places of worship for all of these women and all of their concubines. And in order to do that, he's going to have to tax the people of God. So the people of God now is going to have to subsidize his lifestyle. Well, after Solomon is gone, now we got his son Rehoboam. And there's a renegade there by the name of Jeroboam who comes to Rehoboam and says to him, now listen, your daddy was a dog. We all know that. And your daddy had some zipper problems along with a whole lot of other stuff. Oh yeah, he was smart. He was brilliant, but he had some problems. And he says to him, now Rebo, if you would just loosen up on some of these requirements that your father placed on us, then we'll serve you. Well, Rehoboam's advisors said to him, in essence, no, go back and tell Jeroboam and all of his boys that, listen, my little finger is going to be thicker than my daddy's loins. When he does that, the 12 tribes will now divide themselves. 10 go to the north, and in history we call them Israel, or the northern kingdom. 2 stay true to God there in the south, Judah and Benjamin. 722 BC, the Assyrians come, take the northern kingdom into captivity. 586 BC, Babylon comes and takes Judah into captivity. Watch this, for 70 years. Within that 70-year period, Persia comes as the dominant world power and takes control of Babylon. There's a king by the name of Cyrus who has some affinity toward the Jews, and he allows them to go back to Jerusalem. They go back in 3 migrations or 3 stages. They go back under Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel rebuilds the broken down temple. Then there is Ezra. Ezra is a scribe. Ezra restores the worship and the priesthood. And the last one to lead people back is going to be Nehemiah. Nehemiah is going to go back, and he's going to build, watch this, not the temple. He's not going to build the church. He's going to build the infrastructure to a broken down community that has been in disrepair now for more than 100+ years. Now watch this. At Nehemiah 1 and verse number 11, the Bible says that Nehemiah is a cupbearer. Now, what in the world is a cupbearer? Well, we think of a cupbearer as someone who would serve wine to the king. Right. But a cupbearer is more than the official wine taster for the king. According to ancient protocol, a cupbearer had to be one who was cultured, sophisticated, knowledgeable in the law of Persia. He had to be trusted. He had to be loyal. He had to be confidential. Why? Because he had access to the king on a daily basis. He was the one who would schedule appointments for the king. Several of the kings previous to the present king here had been poisoned to death. And so one way of keeping the Persian kings alive and free of assassination was the role of a cupbearer. So if anybody tried to poison the king, Nehemiah would bring the wine, he would bring the food, bring the beverage. If Nehemiah fell dead, king wasn't eating that day. I want you to watch this. The cupbearer had to be handsome. Watch this. And he had to be personable. He had to be handsome. And he had to be personable. Because Persian kings did not allow, watch this, sadness in their presence. If you were sad before the king, you could end up dead. And watch this. More than anything else, he had to be a strategic planner. He had to be a strategic planner. Because watch it, he would plan the schedule for the king. You just couldn't stop by the palace and see the king. He planned his day. He planned his year. He planned his week. Before the book is over, Nehemiah is going to become governor of Judah. He had to be skilled in working with people and in politics and a strategic planner. Let me try it again. Remember, I said to you that he gets this done in 52 days. But here's your shout. Nehemiah had never been to Jerusalem. Nehemiah was born in captivity. This is why you have to read Nehemiah and Esther together. Because when they were released to go back to Jerusalem, Esther didn't go back. And that's the reason she didn't go back. She ended up marrying the king. She ain't going back to the hood. Nehemiah didn't go back. Why? Look at his position. He has a prominent, prestigious, powerful position. Until something happened one day. And we're about to see just shortly what this one day is all about. The best way to understand his role is to see a similar role in our government today. All of our presidents have what are called chiefs of staff. The present chief of staff for President Biden, watch this, is another attorney, just like the president. Both of them are attorneys. But his chief of staff is a gentleman by the name of Ron Klain. President Biden goes nowhere without Ron Klain. When he's meeting with heads of state, the one sitting next to him is Ron Klain. When Mr. Biden forgets something when he's talking to a world leader, and he's forgetting some stuff these days, Ron Klain leans over and hands him a note. He's the chief of staff. Nehemiah is chief of staff. Okay, we got the history now? Now, let me give you, from my perspective, there are others, let me give you 5 leadership lessons from the story that I told you. All right, let me give you all 5, just in case I don't have enough time to deal with them in detail, but let me give you all 5 of them. Leadership lesson number 1. Can you see that? Oh, there it is. Watch this. Anyone can steer the ship. But it takes a leader to chart the course. Number 2, watch for divine connections at earthly intersections. Number 3 is what John Maxwell called the law of collaboration. And number 4, discipline yourself to say, oh no, to oh no. Number 5, pulpit elevation for people edification. And the reason why is because you can have strong walls and weak people. Y'all got, I'm here this. Let's take number 1. John Maxwell says, anyone can steer a ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course. Anybody can steer the ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course. See, he has charted a course. Watch this. He knows. At every new level. At every new level, there's a new devil. Now, that's a crude way of saying, let's just be satisfied where we are. But Dr. Hayward ain't satisfied. He knows everybody ain't going with him. He knows that there are going to be some folk who tried to stop him from getting to the next level. But you need to ask yourself this question. How'd you get here? You were not here when he got to town 15 years ago. At every new level, there's a new challenge. There are new difficulties. But Renaissance, this is what you ought to be grateful to God for. Through the assistance of these elders and these deacons and the hundreds of folk here at the Renaissance Church. Look where God has brought you from by the visionary efforts of Dr. Hayward. Since you've gotten here, you can get there. Number two, when you read the book of Nehemiah, I want you to watch for what I call God moments. I want you to watch what I call special times when God sets stuff up. And God will open up a door at the right moment and at the right time. And when he does, you have to be ready to walk through it. Let me just show it to you. Watch for, good leaders, watch for divine connections at earthly intersections. Let me explain my thesis to you. An intersection is a place where things converge, meet, or come together. When you reach an intersection while driving, cars coming from one direction converge or meet with cars coming from another direction. They intersect. Often, we discover divine intersections when we seek God in the midst of our normal, everyday walk of life. Let me show you in the text. As you conduct your normal, watch this, daily routine, God sets up situations at intersections for you to enter. He prepares you for the encounter, and he prepares others to encounter you. At divine connections and intersections, Watch this. God prepares you for the encounter, and he prepares others to encounter you. He creates the perfect scenario. In New Testament theology, we call it a kairos moment. When you talk about time in the New Testament, that there is chronos time and there is kairos time. An example would be something like this. Barclay is preaching from 6 to 7. It's really 6 to 6:50. But watch this. That's chronos. But at 6:45, he gonna say something. God creates 6:45 situations within the 6 to 7 hour. I'd better show it to you. Unless you think making some stuff up here. Let me illustrate it by the text. At Nehemiah 1 and verse 1. The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah. Now it happened in the month of Chislev. What happened? In the month of Chislev. That's on the Hebrew calendar. It parallels to our November-December time frame. All right, so watch this. In November-December, in the 20th year. 20th year of what? Of who? That's all right. He's going to be more specific in next chapter. Right now, just remember, it happened in the month of November, December. He said, I was in Susa, the citadel, that Hanani, one of my brothers, came with certain men from Judah, and I asked them concerning the Jews who escaped, who had survived the exile. These folk have left Persia. They've gone back to Jerusalem. Remember, Nehemiah ain't never been to Jerusalem. But watch this. In November, December, when they're at the winter palace of the Persian kings, it's in Susa. He said one day, Hanani, that's his brother, he had gone to Jerusalem. He has now come back. He said, how are things at home? And they said to me, the remnant there in the province who had survived the exile is in great trouble and shame. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down and the gates are destroyed by fire. As soon as I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days. And then he said, and I continued fasting and praying before the God of heaven. Now watch this. In Nehemiah 2, verse 1, in the month of Nisan. That's April. The 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was before him, took up the wine and gave it to the king. Between November and April. He's been praying. He's been fasting on a daily basis and ain't heard nothing from God. He's weeping, he's mourning, he's crying, and God ain't said nothing. But watch this. He gets up and he goes to work every day. He ain't in no prayer closet. He's doing routine, mundane stuff. And now we's about to have a divine connection at an earthly intersection. And watch how God gives him this Kairos moment. Between November and April. He's been praying. He's been fasting on a daily basis and ain't heard nothing from God. He's weeping, he's mourning, he's crying, and God ain't said nothing. But watch this. He gets up and he goes to work every day. He ain't in no prayer closet. He's doing routine, mundane stuff. And now we's about to have a divine connection at an earthly intersection. And watch how God gives him this Kairos moment. He's been praying 5 months. Been getting up, going to work 5 months. And then one day, he takes wine to the king. And he could no longer hide it. Now, I had not been sad in his presence. And the king said to me, "Why is your face sad? Seeing you were not sick." You got to read between the lines on this one. He had just put some wine in front of the king. He has just put some food in front of the king. And the king looked at him and said, "Dog, what's wrong?" Watch Nehemiah's response. Why is your face sad? Seeing you and I sick. This is nothing but the sadness of the heart. Then I was very much, it's not scared. Watch this. He said, okay, no, king, he said, let the king live forever. He said, no, king, live forever. This ain't about that. Ain't nothing in your drink. He says, why should not my face be sad? When the city, the place of my father's graves, lies in ruins and its gates have been destroyed by fire. The king said, what you want? What you want? What are you? Watch this. God just did what? So I prayed to the God of heaven. He'd been praying daily, 5 months. But when the king asked him, what you want? At that moment, he took the time and asked the King of Kings, what should I ask him for? If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in your sight, he said, send me to Judah, to the city of my father's graves, that I may what? And the king said to me, and if you're not careful, you'll run by this parenthetical phrase. The king said to me, and watch this, with the queen sitting beside him. The king said to me, with the queen sitting beside him. Why do we need to know that? I mean, why tell us? Of all of these days, God created the situation, but he didn't create it until that day that the queen was present. 5 months praying, fasting, getting up, going to work every day. But on this day, 2 things happen. Watch this. Sad countenance and the presence of the queen. I'll show you in just a second. Watch this. And I said to the king, if it pleases the king, let letters be given to me, to the governors of the province beyond the river, that they might let me pass through until I come to Judah. And he says, and a letter to Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, that he may give me timber to make beams for the gates of the fortress of the temple, and for the wall of the city, and for the house that I shall occupy. Watch this. And the king granted me what I asked. Watch this. The king granted it, but God gave it. Nehemiah did 3 things daily for almost 5 months until God provided him a God moment. And that divine moment was associated with a sad countenance before the king. And then watch this. And then the presence of the queen. Now, let me take that same scripture and read it from the Living Bible translation. On this day in April, Nehemiah went to work serving wine to the king, and the providential hand of God turned the king's heart. Proverbs 21:1 says, the king's heart is like channels of water in the hand of the Lord. He turns it wherever he wishes. And watch this. And then arranged for the queen to be present, to give backup. Who is this queen? Who is this queen? The king is Artaxerxes. Artaxerxes is the son of Ahasuerus. Well, who in the world is that? Esther's husband. Who is Esther? She's the queen who had previously saved her people from destruction. She had an uncle by the name of Mordecai who put her in a beauty contest. And she won the contest. And then Haman the hater had navigated the situation to get the king Ahasuerus to sign a decree that all of the Jews should be exterminated. And Mordecai goes to his niece Esther and said, you need to go in and talk to the king. She said, I ain't been in 30 days. And he says to her, girlfriend, please understand something. You're a Jew. I know you are married to the king. But when they start killing, they're coming for you too. For who knows that you have come to the kingdom for such an hour as this. Dr. Haywood had just finished a revival for Dr. Doolin sitting over there at Central Point Church of Christ in Dallas, Texas. Several years ago, he gets on a plane. Oh, sitting there in first class with a clergy suit on. That's why I wore this one tonight. Sitting across from him is a gentleman that sees the clergy suit, strikes up a conversation. That conversation was with a man from a restoration extension fund who connected him to one of the regional vice presidents of the Solomon Foundation. That just happens to be the financial institution that financed got hooked up with the Solomon Foundation. All because he had on a clergy suit. And God opened up a door of opportunity. And watch this. Just a regular, everyday routine of life. The law of collaboration. Leaders, you need to have an openness and sensitivity to collaborate with the secular world in order to advance sacred assignments. Nehemiah asked a secular leader Artaxerxes was not a follower of God. When the king asked him, what you want? The text says, Nehemiah prayed. So he asked God, what do I need to ask him for? And God said, ask him, send you to Judah. Ask him, watch this, for a government grant. Ask him for some timber. After all, the earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, and everything in it. Somewhere in the Bible it says, the wealth of the wicked is reserved for the righteous. Somewhere in the Bible it says, the cattle on 1,000 hills belong to God. And if I could just let you in on a little something here, he owns the hills too. There are people out there in the world who share your passion and your values, but don't share your theology. And we need to learn to collaborate with folk who don't share our theology, but they share our passion and they share our values. But they believe in feeding the hungry too. They believe in women's shelters too. Let me just mention the last two on my way to the seat. You have to learn how to say, oh no, to oh no. Nehemiah chapter 6, Tobiah, Sanballat, Gresham sent a message to Nehemiah. Come down here to Ono and let's talk. Now you need to know that Gresham, Tobiah, Sanballat are haters. They said, stop working on the wall and come down here and let's talk. And when you read the text, it said all they wanted to do was to harm him. They had tried intimidation in chapter 2. Intimidation didn't work. In fact, if you finish reading the chapter, it says, meet us down in the temple. Stop working on the wall. Meet us at the church house. And the Bible said a false prophet by the name of Shemaiah had prophesied, and they tried to set him up to hurt him. And Ezra the scribe stood on a wooden platform that they had made for that purpose, and beside him stood now, had I put all those Hebrew names in there, you wouldn't be able to read them. So I thought I'd make it easy for you to read. And beside him stood David Bishop, Ed Gaines, William Johnson, David Logan, Bill Moore, Johnny Ross, Floyd Williams, Dr. Robert Wilson. And I threw my boys in there. Carrie Barnes, Anthony Brooks, Isaac Nixon, and Harrell Thomas. And I don't have time to develop it. But please know this. Know what a pulpit is. Now, in church settings, it's just an elevated platform where the preacher preaches. But do some background on that word, and you will find out that on ancient ships, they had a place called the pulpit. And they would put a man there in an elevated position so he could look out and see danger and trouble coming toward the ship. But because he was elevated, he could see what they could not see. And this man and all of these preachers stand every Sunday. You're not elevating the man, you are elevating the message, because it is the message that builds strong people. So there has to be pulpit elevation for people edification. I'll see y'all later.